Hey, hello everyone. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, wherever it is that you're dialing from today. Thank you so much for joining the Laidlaw Scholarship information session. I can see that the attendee list is slowly rising, so I'll just give it a few moments just to make sure that you're all connected to the audio and that you can hear me. Perfect. I think we have everyone. So yes, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining our Laidlaw Scholarship information session. My name is Mandeep Mahal, and I'm one of the recruitment managers for the Oxford MBA. And in today's session, I'm going to be speaking about the Laidlaw scholarships. I'm going to go through the process, the requirements for the scholarship, and then I'd say most importantly, you'll get to hear from a panel. So I'm really delighted to be joined by a current student and some of our alumni, and it would be a great opportunity to hear from them in terms of their experience of applying for the Laidlaw Scholarship, being successful, and their process of being a scholar, and also in terms of their experience on the Oxford MBA. So, and in fact, if there are any questions that you do have for our panel, please do go ahead and use the Q&A function and we'll get to those questions. And then also, please feel free to say hi in the chat. We do want to have this session to be interactive as possible. Okay, so to get us started, you can see a quote from the CEO, so from Susanna Kemp of the Laidlaw Foundation. And I think what's really important to take from this quote is, well, it's two parts. It's the extraordinary women and who would not otherwise be able to afford an MBA. So we are looking for exceptional talent. We are looking for women who want to lead in a responsible way, and ask some of those big questions. So on the MBA, we are a school that's known for impact. We are known for responsible business, leading with a purpose. And what's great about the Laidlaw Scholarship, that it is also focused on those who would not otherwise be able to afford an MBA. Now, we know MBAs are an expensive investment, and it's great to have a scholarship that not only looks at merit-based academic achievements, but also for those who would not do this otherwise. And that really is a big element of the Laidlaw Foundation. So the scholarship in terms of Laidlaw, they are looking to advance younger girls and women. And in fact, I would encourage you to have a look at the Laidlaw website. They have some really great resources on there. They are not only working with business schools and MBAs, but also younger girls at sort of undergraduate level and school level. And I would say here at Oxford, we are one of the most gender balanced cohorts on the MBA. So, in fact, for this year's class, 48% of our class are female. And in fact, if I take you back a couple of years ago, we did hit gender parity. So, that year, a couple of years ago, 51% of our class were female. So, it was actually the first year that females outnumbered the males. And we've been doing a lot of work to get to that over the last few years. We've been sort of steadily sort of rising in our female numbers. And the work that we do with the Laidlaw Foundation, I say, is really attributed to that in terms of having these fantastic scholarships. And Lord Laidlaw describes his mission on what drove him to start this scholarship. So he had worked with a lot of women in leadership positions and found that those organisations he really saw the success of those that had that gender balance. And there is, of course, a lot of research and reports that organisations that do have that balance, and in fact, I would say even on the MBA cohort, because we do have a good balance in terms of thinking about those interactions, those discussions that you're going to have in the classroom, it is for the better. So, and that really is at the root of that. And it's not about checking a box and having parity to reach a statistic. This is about women going on to those leadership positions, and it's the opportunity this affords to women who might have not otherwise applied or considered an MBA. So they are able to go ahead and reach that higher level of leadership and those high level roles. The Laidlaw Scholarship has been running with other schools globally for a good few years now. And in fact, there is a considerable network of other Laidlaw scholars. My understanding that it initially started out with Columbia Business School, and now there is a number of other European schools as well. So I know London Business School is part of the network. I also believe that IE and HEC have recently become part of the network as well. So there really is that global network that you'll have access to. And you can see actually from this picture, this is actually last year's class. In fact, I can see Mary and Sonal on there, so we'll get to hear from them shortly. And this is from the Scholars Breakfast, and we'll get into this in a moment, but certainly as a Laidlaw Scholar, there are certain benefits that you would get whilst you're on the programme. So if we get into the details of the scholarship, so there are up to 10 awards, 8 full awards and 2 half awards. So they range from partial to full. Full awards are covering the full tuition for the year that you are applying to. So I'd say the scholarship is based on tuition, though something that I do want to mention that in the past there have been some cases that some of our Laidlaw scholars have been successful in receiving additional financial help. Now, I just want to mention that this is not guaranteed, but there may be an opportunity to put a case forward if you are successful in receiving the Laidlaw Scholarship. And that's something that can be, in fact, if you are successful, we can sort of talk you through that process. The criteria for the scholarship is made up of different parts, and you're being assessed on different elements, different parts by the scholarship committee. So I would say that we are looking for that academic excellence, and I'd say that goes without saying. It is the University of Oxford that you are applying to. So we are looking for that in your MBA application for you to demonstrate that. So that could be through your academic, your undergraduate degree, any other master's degrees if you do have those, your GMAT, your GRE. I'm not going to spend too much time going into the details of the application requirement for the MBA. In fact, I would recommend you can view those details on the website. One thing that I will say, which I understand this may be a very typical sort of business school sort of saying, but we do look at applications holistically, and the committee are going to look at your entire application. So you can certainly look to balance your profile. So to give an example, if you're someone who potentially may have a lower GPA, a lower bachelor's degree, you can certainly look to compensate that with a higher GMAT or GRE, and then also vice versa. And I think also really important to mention that we don't have hard requirements. So we do have advice on what is competitive when it comes to your undergraduate degree, your GMAT, your GRE. But if you are dialing in today, and if your bachelor's degree, or if you have taken the GMAT GRE, if it's slightly lower, that shouldn't discourage you from applying. It's really thinking about your entire application. And you can certainly look to show sort of excellent sort of merit-based achievements through either previous university awards, prizes, and other degrees beyond your bachelor's. And then demonstrating that financial need. So there is some detailed guidance available when you're applying to the scholarship, and we are asking for you to complete some information about your household income, and that's the people that you are living with. So people in your household that have a part in your outgoings. We're asking you about financial responsibility, and if you do have any dependents, and that could be, yes, dependent children, or it could be parents, sibling, any financial responsibility that you do have. And then finally, we are asking you to demonstrate leadership potential and commitment to gender equality and leading ethically. And this is really important. The scholarship application will ask you what you have done or currently doing to support women gender equality in your career, and also as a Laidlaw scholar, how do you plan to support women and develop female leaders? I would say that the committee are really looking for people who have already made steps to support women previously and want to continue and expand on that work. We are looking for people who can clearly demonstrate what they are doing in this space. And then also in terms of the scholarship is contingent membership at Reuben. So that is something that has actually been in place for a couple of years now. So our last year's cohort, in fact, Mary and Sona, who were part of that cohort, were members at Reuben College. And in fact, we can certainly hear about their experience at Reuben. And my understanding is that with Reuben, you are expected to take on an active role. So that will be assigned, in fact, you will be assigned a dedicated fellow or tutor. And as a Laidlaw scholar, you are encouraged to take part in particular sort of events and competitions. So in order to apply for the scholarship, and in fact, I am making the assumption that most people dialing in today are considering an application for 2026. So our upcoming deadline is fast approaching now. So we have our stage 4 deadline, which is on the 7th of January. And that does coincide with the scholarship deadline for Laidlaw for 2026. So you need to ensure that your MBA application and your scholarship application are submitted together. That is really important. And applications for the scholarship. So actually, we've slightly changed the process. So in fact, I'm not sure if there is anyone dialing in today who's actually already submitted an application in earlier stages and have actually been successful in being shortlisted for Laidlaw. If there is anyone dialing in today, then well, congratulations if you have been successful in being shortlisted. The committee have actually changed things up slightly this year. So anyone who's applied in stages 1, 2, and 3, I would say in the next week or so, the committee would be looking at making final shortlists of interviews, and then interviews will be taking place in January. So we're actually looking to potentially award sort of half of those awards earlier in the year. So if you are someone who has applied earlier, it does come with those advantages. And then applications that have been submitted for stage 4, which is on the 7th of January, those applications will be reviewed. In fact, those final decisions will come out in March if you are successful in receiving an offer of a place on the programme. And then the committee will then start looking to make those shortlisting decisions. And then in terms of interviews will be expected to take place in April or in May. And so, yes, further information will be provided to you. And there is an email address on the slide now. So if anyone does have any questions about the scholarship, please do get in touch with us via that email. That does sit with our funding team, and they are able to answer any questions that you may have about the details of the scholarship application process. Now, in terms of the network, I think it's really important to think about this in terms of the power of the network that it does bring the scholarship. It is a growing network of other Laidlaw scholars from other schools, and it is a lifelong network across industries and not just globally. Each year there is an annual dinner with the representatives of the Laidlaw Foundation, so that would be side faculty, previous scholars. And I would say that the scholarship offers a really comprehensive scholar programming where participants get to engage in a variety of impactful activities. So there are breakfasts, dinners, drink events hosted by the MBA director. Our scholars do receive priority access to high-profile events focused on female empowerment and participating in career workshops and networking sessions organised by the Laidlaw Foundation, where they do get the opportunity to connect with other Laidlaw scholars and alumni. And we'll get to hear about some of those events and activities in a moment from our panel. And I would say that we're really we've been getting into, in fact, we're getting into our 6th year now, I believe it is, with Laidlaw. So we are really creating a nice community, and our scholars, I'd say, are amazing, and they have so many different backgrounds and come from across the globe and really have different stories to tell. Okay, so before we get into the panel discussion, I wanted to share this video. In fact, this video is from our inaugural cohort. So this was the first year of our Laidlaw scholars, and hopefully this will just give you a snippet of the community. So I'm going to play this, and in fact the volume is at the highest, so if you're unable to hear, then I would encourage you just to put your volume up.
I've always known that I wanted to study at Oxford, but it just felt like one of those far-fetched dreams that you have at the back of your mind that like would never come true. I'm a single mom and I was working 2 jobs. Life was really, really full on. How am I going to move countries? How am I going to manage a full-time MBA? I saw that there was a new scholarship being launched specifically for women leaders. The description was you need to have a passion to empower women and have a dream to perhaps become an executive somewhere. And I was like, that sounds like me.
The Laidlaw Scholarship is empowerment, right? Scholarship empowers women like me who ordinarily couldn't have afforded an education like this one to help us come here and achieve every dream you had in your mind that you thought was impossible. Without these types of opportunities, and the opportunities to not have to worry about funding and focus on your education, I wouldn't be here.
It really gave me like a I mean, network seems like the wrong term, like really like a sisterhood of women. 50% of the world is female. And if men continue to occupy positions of power and making decisions on behalf of women, we will never reach a society where problems are solved properly.
You need more women at the top, right? And the truth is, there's certain things that help you rise to the top. And one of that, honestly, is a business degree like this one.
The Oxford MBA actually has one of the highest women participation rates of all MBAs. And I think the scholarship helps to do that. Recently, Laidlaw launched a fund for the scholars. It's a £50 million fund, and it invests in businesses started by the scholars. I think that is amazing because across the globe, women struggle to get funding from banks for business ventures they want to start. The MBA here is the perfect combination of business and impact. It doesn't talk about business in isolation. It talks about how it has a bigger role to play in society.
Being able to represent myself, my family, my country, my continent, and help other people come up and do the same thing. And that is really the essence of the scholarship. So make people know that they can do things like this, because they've seen people like me.
The first thing that we usually do is disqualify ourselves because we think, oh my gosh, it's Oxford, I will never make it in there. Try it, apply, take a leap of faith.
Imposter syndrome is something that affects a lot of people, but I would say that, believe in yourself, go for it, and just put your best foot forward.
Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that video and that's given you a little bit of a flavour in terms of the Laidlaw Scholarship. Now I'd say that we're at this exciting part of the session now, so we'll be turning over to our panel. So in fact, if I can ask our panelists to come and join us, so if you can switch your cameras on. In fact, I just realised my camera is also off, so let me switch mine back on. Great. So a big thank you to our panelists for joining us today. So to begin with, if we can start with some introductions. So, and in fact, Tamara, you're first on my screen. So if we could start with you.
Of course. Thank you for having me on this panel. And I was just mentioning to the rest of the group before this joined, this is such a full circle moment because this was literally me last year when I was applying for the Oxford MBA. So I hope this process encourages a lot of you to apply for the scholarship and, join the MBA program and make the most of it. My name is Tamara Fernandez. I'm a current student at the MBA program. Before this, I worked in social impact consulting for 5 years in urban sanitation. And I'm very happy to be here and speak about my experience and my cohort's experience as part of the program. Should I just hand it over, Mandeep?
Yes, great. Thank you. And also, is it exam week as well? I should say thank you so much for joining. I know that it's probably pressure is on at the minute with assessment week. And in fact, I'm guessing Mary and Sonal might actually, and even Shriti might remember that. So thank you so much for taking time out.
No, happy to be here. It's going to be a long night either way. So
great. Thank you so much. Mary, if we come over to you next.
Hello, everyone. I was an MBA last year and obviously was one of the Laidlaw scholars. I'm really happy to join you today. I think these conversations really helped me in making my decision. I come from a background in strategy operations and consulting for startups. So I didn't come from that traditional corporate or banking or whatever it may be, whatever kind of ideal you're holding up as, this is the bar for what they're looking for. There are a lot of people that end up in this program. And I think my cohort was really, really diverse. So I would encourage you to kind of push ahead. But that's a strange introduction, but I'm going to let it slide. I'll pass off to the next person.
No, it's not a great introduction. Thank you. Shriti, we'll come to you next.
Hi everyone, I'm really grateful to be here. I was a Laidlaw and School Scholar in the 2022 to 23 batch. Really excited to see you all. So I come from India. I worked as an entrepreneur for about 4 years. I ran a food and beverage e-commerce marketplace. and successfully exited it before I joined the MBA. After graduating, I worked as a sustainability consultant, primarily for a SaaS startup that worked in the fashion and textile space. And I actually very recently left it and moved to the Bay Area because it's interesting. I'm working on an AI co-pilot for MBA applications. So really feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then last but certainly not least, we'll come over to you, Sonal.
Thanks, Mandeep. Hey everyone, I'm Sonal. I'm from India as well. I graduated, I'm in the same cohort as Mary. We got done this September, so I'm just 3 months alumni. My background is in social impact as well. So I was primarily working on gender lens investing and consulting. Currently, I'm working within the impact finance space, but more focused on debt capital markets in emerging markets like Africa and Bangladesh. So very excited to be here. And it's also a full circle moment for me because I was on every panel, even though like a lot of the information was identical, I still made sure I attended every panel because I was rigorously making notes to make sure that my application as robust as possible. So I've been in your shoes and I'm very happy to help on this panel, and even one-on-one, you can always reach out to me or any of us for that matter. So really excited.
Great, thank you everyone. So please do go ahead and use the Q&A function for submitting those questions. In fact, I can see that there's already one in there and we will get to those. But to get started, I do have a couple of questions for our panel. So Tamara, I'm going to come to you first because it's probably a bit more fresh in your head, in fact, that you've just started the program. So in terms of your sort of scholarship application. So if you could talk through us in terms of what initially motivated you to apply for the Laidlaw Scholarship and also why Oxford Said?
Thank you. And I think this is the unfortunate part of being first on the panel. But I will invert those answers and I'll start with why Oxford first because that was my focal point. I come from an impact background and I very much wanted to continue being in the impact space. When I looked at master's programs to apply to, I didn't want like a pure policy program because I wanted something with a business and finance background because that was sort of the hybrid of the role I was doing pre the MBA. And I was very, very particular that I wanted a school with a particular impact focus and a particular ethos in terms of inclusion, in terms of diverse perspectives, in terms of community. And to me, Oxford ticked all those boxes in terms of having a supportive community instead, in terms of having a humanities approach to learning, in terms of having a very impact embedded lens. So without a question, Oxford. And then after the Laidlaw Scholars, it was just a practical decision because, again, working in the impact space and having a family to support because both my parents were retired, it did put some very realistic financial constraints on me. But at the same time, I still wanted to be ambitious in my career and dreams. And I felt like my work and track record stood me a good chance of getting the scholarship, which is why I applied. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then if we come to Sonal next. So Sonal, if you could speak to us about some of the unique opportunities in terms of sort of the academic leadership or even sort of anything sort of personal that you've accessed specifically because of the scholarship.
Sure, Mandeep. I think I'd start with the unique opportunities on the personal front. So we did hear the word sisterhood in the video, right? And that's very true and very valuable because you're going to be a part of a community of 9 to 10 women who are extremely inspiring, but also very warm. We're very diverse, but I think we're all grounded in similar values. So that was the biggest takeaway for me as a Laidlaw scholar, being among these women who are very inspiring and people who you will end up kind of reaching out to for personal and professional help, right? So the biggest takeaway for me was the community. But even on the other front, I was a part of the Oxford Women in Leadership Alliance. specifically to work with the Laidlaw Foundation to make the experience of current scholars and future scholars better, right? So being a part of Aula, which I think is a very integral alliance within the Oxford side MBA, was something that I could access because of Laidlaw. Apart from that, I think the MBA in general gives you a lot of leadership opportunities, and being a Laidlaw scholar helps you kind of leverage the brand and the identity that you bring, right? So, yeah, I think those were the two most important, I'd say, opportunities that I could tap into being a Laidlaw scholar.
Great, thank you. And then, Mary, if we come to you, so the Laidlaw Scholarship, it does emphasize women in leadership and in terms of global impact. And how would you say that shaped the direction of your MBA?
That's a good question. I think part of why I applied for the Laidlaw Scholarship is that I'm very passionate about building opportunities for women in leadership. So I'm on the board for a nonprofit in the US called Women's Empowerment, and they help to educate and find homes and jobs for homeless women and women with families. And some of those women have actually gone on to work in government and other roles, and to watch their lives change as dramatically as it has, it made it very clear to me that Laidlaw was going to be a wonderful community of women who were just starting their trajectory. And these are women, your fellow Laidlaw scholars are already so amazingly accomplished. But having an opportunity to be a part of the Laidlaw network, where they are today, as impressive as it is, as impressive as each of you are, that is going to be just your starting point. There is a huge emphasis on building your leadership capability and setting your network for graduation to move into leadership. And there's also plenty of opportunities for mentorship. I come from a background where a lot of the companies I work in, I'm the only woman there. There is a huge uphill battle for me to take women who are developing and put them into roles in those organizations. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being one of the Laidlaw scholars, is that you have the opportunity not only to receive the benefits yourself and your leadership abilities, but also learn how to mentor, how to guide, how to develop others, and how to spread the opportunity that you've been given to those around you within your MBA cohort and beyond.
That's great. Thank you, Mary. And then Shruti, so in terms of, if we come to you next, so it's been a few years now, so you graduated in sorry, I'm mixing the years up now. Was it 23 you graduated in? Yeah, so 23. So it's been a couple of years now. So how would you say you have carried the Laidlaw mission into your sort of post-MBA career?
So, the application asks you that question, that, how would you make a difference in your journey forward? And I believe you can make a difference in multiple ways. So I'll give you an example. One is very obviously paying it forward, right? I genuinely believe that you can assess the network of a potential school that you're applying to by reaching out to the candidates and looking at what's the success rate. Do they respond to you? Do they give you support in whatever shape or form, right? Do you feel that, okay, this network is an alive, thriving thing and you can potentially be a part of it? So now I pay it forward. That's point one. Point two is in my work, right? Can you be an example in your work, not just in terms of paving the way for women who might be in your space in the future, but also can you set an example for how you claim your space? So in my career in the sustainability consulting space, it's there, I mean, there were no, let's say, obstacles in that sense, but it was interesting for me to be like, in SaaS, in sales and business development, when I would go out to conferences and all, it still makes a difference. So you have these like the Climate Week that happens in London. It's a massive event. We put up a stall here, and then I would see these interns who were currently studying in UK schools. Potential interns come in and say, "Hey, I saw you, and I would just want to have a chat." So I think you slowly realize after you graduate that presence matters. And point three, I believe, is the sort of values that you gain from opportunities like Laidlaw and school. I think they sort of embed in you. So even if they weren't something that initially you were very aware of, you become aware of them. So now the sort of values we talk about with Laidlaw, equality, community, right, you keep them core and central to you, which I do in my work now. So yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. And then a big part of the application sort of process for the scholarship is in terms of articulating that leadership vision, that purpose, and then also in terms of that commitment to gender equality. So in fact, potentially we could look to hear from all of you in terms of how you look to approach that, and if there's any particular advice that you would give to anyone who is considering an application. So Mary, if we come to you first.
Sure. I think this is actually a great one for me to answer, because prior to applying for this scholarship, I hadn't even realized all of the efforts that I had put in around creating gender equality. I had never thought of myself as a champion in that way, and I had no kind of personal identity that was tied to that. And as I sat down, as I was writing this, it was like, I've actually worked on this my whole career. I've, started initiatives at every company that I work at. I, was on the board of the nonprofit, all these various things. And I had never taken the time to really articulate them or, kind of accept them as a part of my work identity. So that alone, the application process alone was really a discovery for me into how much that I've done. So I would say if you're sitting there and you think to yourself, I haven't gone out and started my own company that does this, I haven't changed the world, dig a little deeper, spend some time really asking yourself how you've created space for other women within your personal and professional life, because you may be really surprised. And I was very surprised throughout this process because I had never thought of myself that way. My own husband was like, "What? That's like your biggest thing. Every place you work at, that's your biggest thing that you're working on." And yeah, so I would encourage you to dig deep and speak to those around you, those that know you best. They may remember things that you've accomplished in a completely different light from the way that you think of them.
I think that's really great to hear. And I think also you'll find the MBA application, the scholarship application, it really is an introspective thing that you're working on. And in fact, a lot of the questions they've designed to be quite reflective as well. So it's a great opportunity to take that time out and actually reflect. And as Mary said, that I think you'll be surprised as you start sort of thinking about, and some of these things potentially do come through. So yes, thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to that?
Yeah, I could go next, Mandeep. So, just echoing what Mary said, introspection was the most important part of my application, because sometimes you're just worried about making sure you're doing the best research and using the right words. You really lose out on what your impact really is, right? And it was a long journey for me as someone who's extremely shy about talking about myself. I took a good amount of time really sitting with the work that I've done and understanding that I've been a leader in very different capacities in most of my previous roles. It's not just about the title, right? And it's important to know that when Laidlaw says leadership, it's not about like the destination. It's not the finished product, but it's about defining your path to leadership as well. And I'm specifically saying this because I was quite concerned about not having enough years of work experience. Because when I saw the previous scholars' profile, they all seem like they've founded so many things, done amazing work, and I was never ready. But then I had to really take a step back and realize that it's about how my behavior really embodied Laidlaw's vision and not just the titles or the kind of brands that I worked with. So it's important for you to really hype yourself up, if I have to put it in simple words. Don't feel shy to like talk about yourself in your application, and but also be authentic, because it's a lot more rewarding when you're authentic and true to what the scholarship stands for and your alignment with the scholarship. So try to find the right balance. It is difficult for some of us because most of us women have imposter syndrome, but spend some time. Like, it's not just about doing the work, it's about pausing and reflecting as well. So make sure you do that.
Yes, I think that's really important. In fact, I think Paseka said it at the end of that video, in terms of, I think as women you tend to discount yourselves in terms of imposter syndrome, but in terms of apply it, you never know. And in fact, I think that's been the case with a number of our Laidlaw scholars. Maybe they've put their foot forward and they've been successful. So yes, thank you, Sonal. Shruti and Tamara.
If I may, I just want to share
Yeah.
an example here.
Yes, of course.
I remember from my application, this is very similar to what I wrote. I basically just told the application reader that directly I do not work so closely with women that I empower their lives, right? I run a food and beverage e-commerce marketplace as an entrepreneur, right? So as an entrepreneur, yes, I'm claiming my space, I'm being a founder in this industry, but I do not empower their lives directly. But I work with micro farmers. I help them launch and grow their food brands. And a majority of these micro farmers may or may not be women, right? And ultimately, those communities' lives do get impacted. So, what Sonal said about authenticity, I think in a lot of the attendees that we have here, you guys might be feeling that, hey, I do this job or this work and it doesn't impact women directly. What do I say? So as Mary said, think deeper. There might be something that you can be like, hey, why am I discounting that? And you just say it outright, right? You don't really need to faff it up, and that would work. Trust me, it would work.
Great. Thank you, Shruti. And then I think certainly a big part of Laidlaw is the network and the benefits. And in fact, as mentioned, the network is really starting to grow now. And if we could actually just hear from everyone, if just in terms of their experience of the network and which particular sort of events they were able to participate in, and just to speak about in terms of the benefits that you did get to take advantage of. And in fact, Tamara, I know that you're sort of very early in, so it's just you're coming towards the end of Michaelmas term. So if there is actually anything, in fact, if we start with you in terms of the
Sure.
first term.
I mean, I do want to talk to it in two terms. One is obviously like the larger connection you get with the Laidlaw network, and the really positive sense of sisterhood where you can sort of bring your own self and be vulnerable and get advice from the larger community and your peers. I think we recently had the Elevate program, which is where we met the Laidlaw MBA scholars from other schools over 2 days. And that was a wonderful experience, to meet people who have similar backgrounds than you and similar aspirations. That's great. But I also do want to talk about how proactive the program is on giving you one-on-one support. I think it was mentioned in the video that there is a Laidlaw Scholars Venture, a Laidlaw Fund started. And I was working in the Impact VC space and actually looking for active mentorship, and I did reach out to them. And I've had various one-on-one coaching sessions. And, this is above and beyond what the board venture team does as part of their normal job, but they did make time for me when I was applying to the research internship that I have now with AVPN. They looked through my application, they advised me on how to position myself. So I do think even if you look for one-on-one support, like if you get into the network, I would say find certain champions within the network, whether through the Leader Scholar Ventures, through the Elevate program. There are other programs for women who are doing MIMs. If you identify someone who you resonate with, the foundation does connect you with them, and does make sure that you get the mentorship and support that you need. And I think that has been more helpful than anything from a career point of view.
Okay, thank you. And then Sonal, Mary, if we come to you next, so I know that you've just recently sort of graduated a few months ago, but in terms of the year that you did have, how were you able to get involved in terms of with the Laidlaw sort of community?
I don't know if Sonal wants to go first, but I'll jump in. So as Tamar had said, the Elevate conference is a wonderful experience, and I still have connections from that reach out and want to get coffee and all these various things. And a good number, you're going to get a good cross section of the community. So you'll be meeting scholars from other universities from around the world. I was surprised that I was meeting people from undergraduate level up through, senior vice president, director level from huge companies you would know, like Paramount, et cetera. So I think, that is a great experience. I guess I was really surprised by all of the access that I got just due to being a Laidlaw scholar and being well connected with the other scholars that had nothing to do with Laidlaw. So your cohort, the women that you come in with, are going to be leading clubs, organizations. They're going to be amazing, fantastic women. I am just a mom. That's kind of my thought coming in is like, I'm not going to have time for any of this stuff because I am moving all of my kids around the world and I would like to still know who they are by the time I finish my MBA. So there were a lot of things that I had kind of written off that I'm just not going to get access to that because I'm not plugged in and I can't come to the meetings every week and all this other stuff. But when you have availability, if you send a message out to your other Laidlaw scholars, they will support you. They will find you a spot. They will get you a gala ticket when the gala is in 2 hours, and they will loan you a ball gown to go. So it's a wonderful network of women that are very plugged in. Some of you will be more plugged in than others, and you will support us lame ducks to make it out to do things and to get well connected. So I think that was kind of the most impactful thing for me is all the off-label events that you will have access to.
Great, thank you. Yes, Sonal, I can see you've just come off
Yeah,
mute.
like echoing what Mary said, the Elevate conference, a lot of structured engagements give you access to rooms that you might not be able to find yourself if you are not a Laidlaw scholar. Just an example would be Reuben College organized a talk by the chairman of BII, former chairman of BII, and we literally sat next to him. We were on the same table as him, right? That's not an opportunity you would otherwise get. And we could have detailed interactions with him. We went for a drink to the bar. So, and all of this is only because we were Laidlaw scholars. So there's a lot of privileges that come with it, tangible as well as intangible privileges. You get a lot of friendly introductions to advisors via Reuben College, which is also because of your status as a Laidlaw scholar. So there are good opportunities that are structured, but also very serendipitous opportunities that come up just because you're a scholar. And of course, adding to what Mary said, like these women, I keep saying that again, but they're amazing women who are very open to help you. I've set up one-on-one sessions with my peer scholars to get some career support as well, and those have been very helpful. And I think right now, in the short term, I haven't really tapped into the larger Laidlaw network yet, but I'm very sure that as I advance in my career, I'll be for sure needing some of their support as my career gets a lot more global.
Great, thank you, Sonal. And then, yes, well, with Shriti, because you were the second sort of year of Laidlaw in terms of here at Oxford, so you've started to see sort of quite a few sort of cohorts come through. And yes, how have you sort of leveraged the network and the benefits?
Mandeep, the network is brilliant because one, especially because I was from the second batch. So before Laidlaw came to Oxford, Laidlaw was already there in other colleges, like it was there at Columbia, LBS, etc. Right? So there was the sense that we are a new community and we want to grow and become denser and more supportive and more active, right? So I still feel that energy in especially in the ways that Tamara, Sonal, and Miri have talked about. So the community shines through in little ways and then big. So I'll give you an example from my application time, and I'll then give an example from after graduation. So as I said, like one of the ways that you really see how a network operates or how a foundation operates is by reaching out and seeing how they respond to you, right? So I was an applicant at both LBS as well as Oxford, and I was in the running for Laidlaw for both of them. And I had secured an admit from LBS and a 40K scholarship, but I wanted Laidlaw because I wanted a full ride, because I needed that financially. And so I was not getting a great response from LBS in terms of at least telling me if I was shortlisted or when the interview was. And in Oxford, I knew that I've been shortlisted and my interview is coming up. So I reached out to the Laidlaw Foundation and told them, hey, I want to speak to the CEO, Susanna, because I want to tell her the context I'm in and I want to understand where I can go from here. So I got a call from Susanna. This is when I haven't accepted any offer. I'm in the Laidlaw for both of them. And then Susanna hears out my case and is very generous and says, okay, you want Laidlaw at both the schools. Either way, if this works out for you, you're going to be a scholar with us. Let me see what's the best I can do. So my ask for her essentially was, can you see whether at LBS, right, I do have a chance? Do they have seats open? I do not have visibility yet. So she reaches out to LBS, finds out the information that I need for my own application strategy, and is like, hey, I'm really sorry. They have awarded all the spots at your stage. Unless someone recedes on their offer, do not hinge on it. For me, that meant a lot because I was like, hey, I'm going to put all my eggs in the Oxford Laidlaw basket now, because I know that being a part of this foundation scholar network would be immensely beneficial for me. If they can look out for you at this stage when you're not even in, they will always look out for you. So that's example one. Example two would be, everyone's spoken about little ways how the scholar network has helped them. I would like to sort of give an example about how you can look at it from a bigger picture. Think of this network as one of the many networks that will stack up. Like, think of this as, I don't mean to dilute the importance, but think of them as Pokemon cards in your stack. Okay. Each network stacks up to create the sort of access you will have as an MBA graduate. And one very recent example I experienced just 2 days back was, so I'm building this AI copilot for MBA admissions. I needed a domain that was already taken. Okay. So I needed this particular domain. I did not want to spend $100 figuring out how to get this domain. So people have like these privacy protected emails. I sent this person an email who owns it. And this person reaches out to me and says, hey, I also just did my EMBA from Ohio State, and you were featured in Poets and Cons. I was also featured in Poets and Cons, and that became a connecting point for us. So I'm using that as an example to be like, every little connecting point would stack up in your MBA journey to give you the network that you will then use an asset for the rest of your life. Laidlaw will be a massive connecting point in that stack. So if you're going to spend 100 hours in your MBA application, hypothetically spend 100 hours to get this Laidlaw, because it would be, an opportunity that would be very, very hard to miss. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shriti. So I can see that we do have a few questions. So thank you everyone for submitting your questions, and we do have some time for those. And in fact, I can see a couple of questions, and in fact, I can see Sonal is typing the answer, but in fact, it would be great to hear about this. So I think this is also going to play a big part in terms of the Laidlaw Scholarship, is that college membership will be at Reuben. So that is something that is, I'd say, relatively new. So I believe Sonal and Mary were sort of like the first sort of cohort who were at Reuben College, and then Tamara as well. So you're currently at Reuben. So in fact, if we could actually hear about your sort of experience with Reuben, and in fact some of the activities that you did get involved with, and yes, so Sonal, I will come to you first.
Sure, Mandeep. Yeah, so we were the first batch of students to be associated with Reuben. So we were exploring a lot of ways to get more involved. I talk about like my highlights personally. So quick disclaimer, Reuben is the newest college at Oxford. So you're not going to find the fancy big buildings. It is a small space, fairly modern, but great amenities and a very cozy space. I did spend a lot of time at Reuben because I was involved with the GCR. I was the religious diversity officer. But most importantly, the library is really nice and comfortable. So I used to end up studying there. you will have access to an advisor who's also a fellow. So any kind of career support that you need, they'll be really happy to help. They're very open to making friendly introductions with people who are doing amazing stuff in your sector of interest, right? And it's fairly diverse as well. You have a lot of folks coming from the STEM background, but there's also good enough representation from business, arts, and humanities. So the quality of conversations are great at Rubin if you take initiatives to be more involved with the college. I think with the MBA, it's a little different. You're spending most of your time at site, and you also don't have too much time to do other things. So the experience I'm sure my experience was completely different from Mary's, and she can talk about that as well. So I tried to make the most of my time at Rubin. But I think with Tamara's batch coming in, there will be more ways for the Laidlaw community to engage actively with the college.
Thank you, Sonal. So yes, Mary, if we can come to you, if you can speak to us a bit about your experience at Rubin.
Of course. So Rubin has multiple events for innovation entrepreneurship. They have a speaker series that happens every week throughout the year as well. There are a lot of events that are organized. We were the first cohort, as Sonal had said, that were, located at Rubin. And so we missed some of the timing to apply to compete in some of the events. I think they've likely kind of ironed those details out, though you always have an invitation. As a Laidlaw scholar, you always have an invitation to attend, to judge, to participate, whatever it may be. I was really surprised that because Rubin is founded on innovation, that I was seeing a lot of my fellow college members at MBA events, at pitching events, at kind of different things. They're trying to get money from the seed fund to start a company. So, while the people that you're interacting with is not a quote unquote business network, they are out there doing amazing things. You will sit next to some of the, most interesting people at your meals that are working on curing cancer and saving the world. It's really, it's a great environment to be in. It's a smaller college. It is graduate only, which, I actually kind of enjoyed. There were a few other people that had kids, which was fantastic. I think all of the Laidlaw scholars being in one college, you may think to yourself, I don't get to pick my college. That's a negative. I'm glad that they pushed us all into one college because I got to interact so much more with my fellow Laidlaw scholars than I would have otherwise. And I really enjoyed that experience of being in a small college where I could bump into Laidlaw scholars, where I had familiar faces. So, I think the events are fantastic. I would say, really lean into that and be a part of the community. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Just to add to
Yes, sorry, carry on.
Just to add to that, I think Rubin is fairly underrated. So there are a lot of opportunities for you to do things that are extremely fun and very intellectually stimulating. It's just that not a lot of people talk about it because it's a new college, right? So I like Mary said, you need to find ways to keep yourself engaged, and you can have like an amazing experience by the end of the year because it has a lot to offer, but fairly underrated in my opinion.
Great, thank you. And then Tamara, if we just come to you quickly in terms of
Yeah,
just
I mean,
about your experience.
yeah. Also relatively new, 3 months into the program here, but I do echo a lot what Sonal and Mary say. I think there are different opportunities, and the great part about being a new college is that you can also create new positions if you want to. So a fellow Laidlaw scholar who's not on this call, Anna, does a lot of the entrepreneurship and seed fund work, which has started in Rubin. Because I had a background in gender, I look at a lot of the gender and financial assessments for the college. And then there are a couple of others from our cohort who are into sports like rowing, or football. So there are different levels of engagement basis your interest, but there are also opportunities for you to create projects on your own. I would also say definitely leverage sort of the Laidlaw tag in terms of being put in contact with other people. And I can just give you an example, like my focus sector was sanitation. And I got a direct connect to the Smith School to speak to some very senior professors because my college and advisor in Reuben is a fellow at Smith as well. And so I do think it's good, especially within the MBA, it can be very business focused. And if you want to go in with that lens, that's perfectly fine. But I think the beauty about Oxford is that you can also sit in on a literature class, or you can also learn about epigenetics, or you can also learn about climate history. And I do think, being in Reuben and speaking to people really, attending the Tuesday talks, attending the student takeovers really sort of expands your perspective and makes you more well-rounded, because you never know, tomorrow in a business interview, you may get a certain case on a particular topic that you spoke to somebody about, and it could just be helpful. So I do think it's a great conduit to the larger community. And I would also say, to the underrated aspect, because we're a newer college, maybe we don't have the stuffy traditions, but I would say it's a lot more equal when it comes to class and gender, being a relatively new college. And I think that's a massive, massive advantage, especially if you're a Laidlaw scholar and you come from a place where you know what class and money struggles can look like and how getting the scholarship is life changing. So I feel like it's an easier way to integrate into the larger Oxford ecosystem as is. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And then yes, and also I would say, oh yes, carry on, Mary.
Welcoming to spouses. My husband was on the soccer team. I did rowing. So unlike a lot of other colleges, they really allow spouses to integrate themselves into the college community, which I appreciated.
No, that's very helpful. And also, I was just going to say as well, in fact, as an MBA student, because your cohort is in so many different colleges, so there is the opportunity as well. So as I think, maybe Reuben is a slightly sort of newer college, but there is still the opportunity to experience that collegiate system that Oxford does have in terms of getting to go to dinners with some of your other sort of classmates as well. So yes, thank you. So I know that we are coming at time, so I can see that there are a few questions. In fact, there are a couple of questions that I can potentially answer very quickly. So Amanda has asked in terms of how many full and partial scholarships are awarded for Oxford annually. Okay, so in terms of, well, if we just speak to the Laidlaw Scholarship, so we have 10 Laidlaw Scholarships, 8 full scholarships, and then 2 partial scholarships. And then in terms of other scholarships and funding, I would certainly recommend going onto the school's website. And in fact, you can look at the MBA pages and have a look at the scholarships. We do have a range of, I'd say majority of our scholarships are partial scholarships, but then we do have a few full scholarships. And you can view the requirements for those particular scholarships. And then I can see that there's another question about, do you need to accept your school offer to know if you are shortlisted? So no, in terms of generally final decisions. So if you've applied for the MBA, we do have a date of when decisions are announced for which particular stage it is that you have applied to. And then I would say shortly afterwards, you'll hear in terms of sort of next steps on the Laidlaw Scholarship. So if you have been successful in being shortlisted, and then we will provide you with further details on that. Okay, so I think we are coming to the end of the time now. In fact, I think to end with, it would be great to hear from you all in terms of if there's what advice would you give to applicants, or what is it that, if there was something that you wish that you did know when you were sort of going through the process? So maybe give you sort of a couple of seconds to think about that. In fact, Shruti, I'm going to come to you first, because I'm sure that you've sort of had that answer before, and the fact that it's been sort of a few years out now. So if we come to you.
Sure. Thank you, Mandeep. 3 things. So my context is that I was a reapplicant to Oxford. Okay, so I applied the first time. I did not have the financial means to pay for my tuition, and I had done a lot of reflection to understand that okay, I need that financial support to be able to do the MBA. Second, I knew that I wanted to continue on an entrepreneurial path post MBA, and having a financial burden on my shoulders just did not align with that career outcome, right? If you're, I can take the example of a friend. He graduated with me. He's still paying off his loan. The interest rate shot up in the last couple of years. He's currently at 15%. It really impacts the choices you make in your post MBA life. So I needed the financial support. I applied the first year, did not get anything, decided to defer, applied again the second year, did not get anything, withdrew my application the third year. I applied and got Skoll and Laidlaw both. What I'm trying to get to is one, if it doesn't work, right, I would say do not think it's the end of the tunnel. I think it's very important. Second, I would say what I learned in those 3 years is what works. And what works is, number one, there is a nuance to positioning yourself, especially for a scholarship like this that has now become extremely competitive. And one mistake that I think people make quite often now that I work in this space and I'm building a product in this space is that when they're looking at your core MBA application, people write it in a way where it's just core work, where they're talking about business numbers and etc etc. So the values that come out of your core MBA application are sort of different versus the values and the numbers and the sort of things you talk about in your Laidlaw application. So when someone reads the full application, there is sort of like a, it's not aligned. There's a disjointment there, if that's a word. So my point is just make sure that your values, your narrative positioning, the tone, everything that you use is sort of aligned across both. And another thing that I would say is people tend to spend, let's say, 80% of their time and effort on the core MBA app, and let's say the last 10-15% on the Laidlaw app. Do not make this mistake, right? Treat both of them as separate, not separate, connected, but individual applications. So if you spend X amount of effort here, spend X amount of effort here, and it would pay off. Think of it this way, that if you get a Laidlaw full ride, you're essentially asking the school for 100K plus investment into you. What sort of input do you need to put in to get that sort of ROI from the school, right? Just do the math and you need to understand what you need to put in. So I think that was more than three. But also a lot of candidates reach out to me for, like, how do we do this? How do we do that? I'm essentially building content for my app. And so if you guys reach out, I have a PDF. I'll be happy to share it with you. That's specifically for Laidlaw. It just has some tips, tricks, and some passages from my fellow scholars' applications that might be helpful. Yeah, just feel free to reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to help. All the best.
Thank you, Shruti. Okay. Tamara, we'll come to you next.
I think Shruti's covered a lot in detail, so I don't want to duplicate anything that she said. I would say don't be afraid to push back and be unique in your answers, right? I think a lot of people think gender and then they give cookie cutter answers that, I want to be this kind of leader who empowers women this way. And I remember I was talking to people in my batch during our interview, and I got a question on what leadership framework should you apply to be a better leader that empowers women? And I remember saying, I don't think leadership frameworks can be applied to people, which sounded so ridiculous post interview. But then when I asked the committee afterwards, like, why did you pick me? They mentioned that it was a bit of an unconventional answer. So I'm not saying to go completely off the rail, but if you have you have a unconventional approach, or you want to push back or turn things on their heads in the application and the interview, I think be strategic about it. It will definitely set you apart. And I would say the second point is it's okay to be vulnerable, right? The reason you're probably applying for the scholarship and asking for monetary help is because it comes from a very real socioeconomic place. And I think the committee is very understanding of that. They don't expect you to be a robot. And so it's okay to have a balance in your essay where you can be aspirational and forward looking, but also very honest and vulnerable about your situation and why the scholarship could be life changing for you.
Great, thank you. Mary, we'll come to you next.
Yeah, I think the point that Tamara just made is one of the most important, because which chances are you have, if you really have come from a challenging background, you have probably spent your entire career creating a facade of perfection that completely conceals that. And I think it's important to remember that when you're applying for this scholarship is a time when you are in a safe environment. You can let some of that guard down, let people know where you've actually come from, and let people know why it is that you need that scholarship and why it would be so valuable to you, your family, your community, your network. I think it's important to remember to do that because, again, you probably have a very refined facade, but they want to know who you really are behind that. And I think taking the time to put that into your application, taking the time to express that in your interview is important. The second part that I would say is that this is general advice and you can take it with a grain of salt, but remember, I'm not your traditional applicant. I actually have a degree in theater and dance. When you're interviewing, take deep breaths, okay? It's okay to pause. You can let the space be full, okay? People will wait to hear what you have to say. I have to remember this advice myself. Take the time to give a considered answer that's authentic instead of that automatic knee-jerk response that you've practiced your entire life. It's okay to fill the time and the space and then to come at it with your full, normal, natural human voice instead of coming into things speaking really quickly, letting your pitch rise and rise and rise. You can take a break. The people that you're interviewing with are also humans and they want you to succeed and they've read your application and they know where you're coming from. They know how you feel, why you might be nervous. Take your time and let them see who you actually are in the interview.
Great, thank you. Some great advice there. And then Sonal, we'll come to you finally if there's any sort of last sort of words that you want to leave the audience with.
Sure, Mandeep. My internet is giving up on me, so I hope I'm audible. But I think mostly just echoing what Tamara said, that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay for your vulnerability to sit along with your ambition. Because sometimes you don't want to make it sound like a sob story, but it's important that you talk about your reality, right? And I strongly believe that's what worked for me and for some of the other women on this panel as well. Secondly, this is advice I got from Asha, who's also another Laidlaw scholar, is don't water down your ambition just because you want to sound reasonable. Um, just make sure you go out there and communicate your ambition in the best possible way, because the folks who are on the panel are not looking for a checklist, right? Sorry, am I audible?
You are audible, yes.
Okay. Yeah, they're not sitting there with a checklist, and like it's not that objective. They are looking to see the person that you are and how big you can think while also being grounded in reality. So yeah, basically don't water down your ambition. Yep, the girls covered most of the other points. So that's all from my end.
Great, thank you so much. So I know we have gone over time, but I want to say a big thank you to our panel. So thank you so much to Tamara, Mary, Shruti and Sonal for joining us and for sharing your insights. I'm sure you've all found that very helpful and informative in terms of sort of thinking about how to sort of craft your Laidlaw sort of scholarship application. Best of luck to everyone who is submitting an application. In fact, I think I did see in the chat that there is someone who has recently been shortlisted. So yes, best of luck with the next steps. And any questions, please feel free to get in touch. So you should have our contact details. And in fact, you'll see that our community is very open, so feel free to get in touch with any questions that you do have. But yes, thank you everyone, and yes, all the best. Thank you. Goodbye.